I heard we had a seminary, I wanted to see what it was like. I was not expecting this though. What I'd hope to be telling myself in the future is that this was the right choice. And from everything I see now, I definitely think it will be. I have no doubts.
I just kept praying that God would reveal His church, God would reveal the way, He would make the way for me. I tried to do it on my own for a while, a couple of years there. I was traveling and reading on my own, but the church, you can't do it on your own. The church is community. So one night, I stumbled upon Etna and the community here, and it really seemed to be an answer to a lot of prayers.
The monastery and convent came to be in Etna in 1983. Metropolitan Cyprian of Oropos and Phili, of blessed memory, blessed His Eminence, Metropolitan Chrysostomos, to make the move to the West Coast. There were many reasons for that, some very practical, menial, one might say, but very practical, being one of these practical reasons being His Eminence's failing health at the time. He had very poor lungs and simply was succumbing to the harsh winters and the very high humidity of the summers in our previous location in Ohio. So we had decided to move to the West Coast. We had a number of ties with communities on the West Coast, the monastery in Patina, and in fact when we began our property search in 1982, we were in the state further south when Father Seraphim succumbed to his own health problems and was in his last days in a hospital in Reading. We joined the community of faithful that were gathered there to pray for him and to hopefully avert his repose, but obviously it did not happen. Father Seraphim did repose while we were there. We stayed for the funeral, but it cemented our conviction that it was in this general region, that is Northern California, Southern Oregon, that we wanted to relocate. On the Sunday of St. Gregory Palamas in 1983, His Eminence actually walked by this property, noticed a for sale sign, and one thing led to another. We purchased the property, we began work on a church, and slowly the remodeling of the one house that was on the property, and building up of, well, what you see now, the monastery of St. Gregory Palamas. In the meantime, Mother Elizabeth, she joined us and began her own property search and found the current 5 acres where the convent of St. Elizabeth is located, about 5 miles away from us. With the founding of the monastery and the convent here in Etna, and its deep roots and its years of experience, Metropolitan Chrysostomos understood that we had a greater duty to the church. It was not enough for us to look to the care and salvation of the souls who were in those monasteries, in that monastery and convent. Metropolitan Chrysostomos was consumed by the thought of his unending concern to fulfill his duty to the church. The inspiration for the seminary is a long-standing one. Metropolitan Chrysostomos held it as a very desirable labor for our monastery. He received that inspiration from Metropolitan Cyprian of blessed memory, who would also talk occasionally about the need for a seminary to serve the old calendar community, but that was affiliated with the monastery, that did not follow the model of the state-sponsored theological seminaries in Greece. We did not have the resources to tackle such a project. We certainly did not have a facility. In 2015, we were approached almost simultaneously by two benefactors, two people who had the resources so that they could actually help us to found a theological seminary.
Glory to thee, our God, glory to thee, heavenly King, O comforter of the Spirit of truth, art everywhere present and fillest all things, O treasury of every good and bestower of life. Come and dwell in us and cleanse us from every stain and save our souls, O good one.
Therefore, glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God's.
Michael wanted a priest, and he thought that a priest would come from the East Coast. He wanted a priest because he felt like the Christians in Bakersfield should have a priest, and that the mission would grow if we had a priest. He told me many times, the mission's not going to grow unless we have a priest. We need a full-time priest. So we had a priest that was full-time, but he was on loan from a parish in Oregon. So he came down for a while, but then the demands of Oregon became so great, he was compelled to go back to Oregon. And so we were left again without a priest. And this troubled Michael. Michael said finally, I don't think we're going to get a lot of help from the East Coast. He says, I've called him multiple times. I don't think we're going to get a priest. He said, to get a priest from the West Coast, he said, we're going to have to urge the bishops to start making more priests. So I got this from him. He said, I have approached the bishops, and one of the impediments to making more priests is a lack of familiarity with Orthodoxy. And they feel that they need a school to teach young men the essential basics of Orthodoxy, so they could perhaps be candidates for the priesthood. So he said, I don't know how we're going to do this, but he said, I think we need a seminary.
And so it was that in late spring of 2015, we began a property search here in Etna.
This is what the building looked like when we began. So, this building was built back in the 1980s by the Forest Service, which used it for about 10 years. Michael Gombos and another benefactor approached us independently back in early 2015, offering to fund the building of a seminary.
Michael and Bishop Chrysostomos and Bishop Auxentios started conversations. And Bishop Chrysostomos had a dream, an idea, a hope to have a seminary, because he realized the same thing. So you have two men with two very different backgrounds, but in their minds, or perhaps their hearts, their love for Orthodoxy, they're both compelled to come to the same conclusion, and that's the need for a seminary.
Metropolitan Chrysostomos, when he would drive by that building, would say, "Boy, I wish we had that building." I used to look at His Eminence and say, "What would you do with it?" He must have said it 100 times.
And we shall do this most correctly if we are very careful when we encounter the teachings of the Holy Fathers, to hold them in the highest regard, which is...
Let's say it's the first clear rebuke towards Nestorius, that he doesn't follow in the tradition of the Fathers. That instead of continuing the teachings of the Holy Fathers, he decided to present or to provide his flock with his own subjective, personal opinions.
Well, for those of you who don't know, Father Yeri is one of our affiliated professors. His specialty is in dogmatics and patristics, but he's a very capable man, and I don't doubt that he could teach probably any class at the seminary. We first met Father Yeri in the early years of this millennium, and it wasn't long after that he came and visited us for the first time in 2004. And ever since, we've had a close bond with him. Great love for the man, and I think he had has always had a great love for our community. I think that love was strongest between His Eminence Metropolitan Chrysostomos and Father Yeri. We knew what a virtuous and capable priest he was, and knew of his importance for the church and the faithful in Greece. Father Yeri actually received a blessing to come and assist us for a short period for 2 years in a row.
I wasn't born as Orthodox. I am convert to Orthodoxy. I was born in Czech Republic. I decided to look for something better, I hoped for, and in the end I found it in the Orthodox Church. The main goal is to train, to educate, and to prepare the priest and other workers for our church. We may mention the second reason, which from practical point of view may be even more important. So the fact that our bishops decided to found the seminary, the awareness of our church of its own responsibility for keeping and safeguarding the Orthodox theology and the Orthodox tradition free by all those distortions that stem from the heresy of ecumenism.
I've always simply been providentially guided into the best things in my life. Iconography, orthodoxy, which I was born into. But when I visited my sisters in Greece, since they knew that I liked to draw, they told me that I should put my artistic abilities to use as an iconographer. And again, I simply fell into this. And the same thing happened with this school. The opportunity simply presented itself, and I knew that I absolutely had to attend.
I had actually already enrolled in another college, a community college near my home, to pursue a degree in law. However, it had been on the back of my mind pursuing theology in one capacity or another since we actually converted to Orthodoxy. And that was thanks to the person who actually introduced us to Orthodoxy was very skilled and well-read.
The pattern and it matches.
So it doesn't, yeah, because it tends to go down into the seam a little bit.
Some challenges were that, well, they didn't have any things set up for females. They only had ideas of how the courses and living situation would go for male students, and so they didn't really know what was going to happen with me. It was interesting because I didn't spend most of my time with the students. I stayed at the convent more.
Well, we had only met Kira very briefly before she came. She came for, I think, maybe one day visit before, and so we didn't know her and we weren't really sure what to expect, but we were very pleasantly surprised. She fit right in. She fit in very well, and we have grown very fond of her. She's become like a little sister to us.
It's like I would always tell Uriah, before you sit down and start sewing, look at where everything is and think where the best place to put it so it's going to not be in your way. One of the things we have done in this, the whole convent, the icon studio and everything, is because we live in a small farming community, that when we first came here, we were a little frightening to them because they didn't know what on earth we were. One of the things we do is sort of outreach is we have a small county fair, and we enter things in the county fair. It's a way to keep people, to sort of reach out and say that we're not weird or not scary, we're people. Now we have lots of friends in the community and people that appreciate what we do, and it's touched a lot of people's spiritual lives too, I think, not especially the ones that became interested because they saw things, that we were doing and made us a little more human.
We had both practical and what you might call spiritual challenges as we tried to establish ourselves here in Etna. We had very limited resources. We spent a full half of our funds to purchase this property, and with thus just a very small amount left to begin the building of the church and the rehabilitation of the monastery house. We were also moving to a very rural and sparsely populated section of California. The people that have been here for generations. They know one another, their parents, their grandparents. They're well established. And as is natural in any such rural community, some outsider decides to relocate and purchase and build in your own neighborhood, and you're tempted to be suspicious or keep an eye on them and wonder who they are, what they're up to, so on. It didn't help things, of course, from such a standpoint that we were dressed very differently than everybody else in the valley, and but time is the best agent in the face of that problem, and thankfully we had time. We went about our work systematically. We built the church right in front of the public eyes. At that time there was no wall in front of the monastery. There was no forest to block the view of the grounds, and people would drive by and stop and just look while we hauled timbers up onto the roof and built slowly the church that you see here now. That helped too. Our common enemy, the evil one, is there at every step of the way, and they're practical temptations, you would call them, that you meet on a regular basis. And with God's help, we prevailed in the tasks that were appointed to us, and here we are.
When I first showed up, I was terrified, for sure. I wanted to be Orthodox, but I was still an outsider, and I barely knew how to take a blessing, and I was like crossing myself at the wrong time and really awkward, and 2 days in, it's become more natural to do that. It's the first liturgy I had At the monastery, I was in my head the whole time. I couldn't calm my mind. My mind was racing. I was thinking, and it was hard for me to pray. I was at the liturgy this morning and asking the Lord for His mercy, for His grace, and feeling His presence and knowing that He is helping us work out our salvation.
St. Photios feast, there was a little gathering here in February. A lot of people I talked to said they were just blown away. So I said, all right, that's enough for me. I don't even have to visit. I sent my application, and now this opportunity arose where I get to come and visit it myself. And I mean, that's just like the cherry on top. I was so thrilled to see such a well-oiled machine. That's kind of what it is here. It's just, this place works really well. It fits really well here. All the right people are here. It's just really excited to learn.
Yeah, I just feel very blessed to be here and very excited to become Orthodox.
Holy God, holy mighty, holy immortal, have mercy on us. Holy God, holy mighty, holy immortal, have mercy on us. Holy God, holy mighty, holy immortal, have mercy on us. As I rise from sleep, I thank Thee, O Holy Trinity, for through Thy great goodness and patience Thou was not angry with me.
The experience of becoming a catechumen here in Etna was it was a momentous day. I had been looking for so long to finally be joined to the church. Catechesis will be a process for the rest of my life, but I think this is a great opportunity to completely immerse myself in an Orthodox lifestyle and an Orthodox community.
We hold communal prayers in the morning at 7 o'clock, so everyone is awake for prayers with housemaster Father George Mavromatis and the rest of the seminarians at least by that time. After that, some form of breakfast, and classes begin at 9:30.
Whoa! What? Hardly see it. Got a face full of steam.
My favorite thing about the seminary would definitely be being able to communicate with other people close in age with me and to be able to understand each other and help each other grow in our studies and in our faith. Of course, I love many of the classes here. I'm definitely discovering things about my faith that I really had no idea about, or things that I sort of knew but didn't really pay much attention, and discovered the great importance of it actually.
Okay, so the Bible itself, the Holy Scriptures are divided into two halves, the Old Testament and the New Testament. I did a rough calculation, and about 81% of Scripture is Old Testament. The problem is we Orthodox don't know it very well. We don't study it very much. That is not to say that we Orthodox are unaware of the Old Testament. Quite the opposite. It is fundamental to patristic thought. If you read the Fathers, you're beginning to read the Fathers. They're constantly referring to the Old Testament. I teach Old Testament here at the seminary. I teach 3 courses of Old Testament. I'm the director of spiritual life, which means I'm the confessor of all the students, as well as several of the staff members. So I confess them on a regular basis and counsel them in their personal lives, hopefully helping them to apply what they're learning in the classroom setting to the individual circumstances of their personal lives, to actually reify what they're learning here at the seminary. So it's not just head knowledge. We actually want to teach people to live the Orthodox faith. That's crucial.
We should be absolutely consistent with the first Christians. For apostles, called to be prophets, witnesses, martyrs.
Everything that I possessed or thought before I came here was burned off. Essentially, I learned I knew nothing. Second year, I started acquiring the knowledge that I should have had for first year. And now at third year, that foundation, which was first cleared in the first year and was established in second year, is now being built upon in our third year. So this year so far deals a lot more with building upon the knowledge we've already had.
And prayers of entreaty for the church, for the world, for kings, for soldiers, allies, the sick, the afflicted, in a word, for all who stand in need.
The things I miss most from home, probably all my family. My godson, my cousins. Do you have anything to ramble about, Uriah?
Me? I don't know, I haven't been asked a question.
Usually you're a pretty good rambler.
Yeah, I am usually a pretty good rambler. The most enjoyable thing I've had this year in comparison to the last 2 years, I have people. The first 2 years, there was nobody. And we only had 2 guys. It was Timothy and I. So this year, I'd say my most enjoyable and most notable situations have been being able to go out and play ping pong in the garage. We've got enough guys that we can go out to the ping pong table and we can play and just enjoy ourselves. Being able to play ping pong, being able to go on walks, being able to, even we've gone swimming. There's some beautiful swimming holes out here where there's a waterfall, you can jump off it. And so I've been able to go out and enjoy swimming with, Billy, with Nathan. Those are all very enjoyable things that hinge upon having now a larger community.
You later proved yourself to actually be a better than you were described.
Let's see, a lot of people talk about you.
No!
People do talk about you.
Why?
Because you're here. It's St. Photios Theological Seminary.
Yeah, but there's no information on me out there.
Yeah, well, people have said that you are outgoing. Everyone always says he's a big guy. Everyone always says, yeah, you're right. Yeah, he's a big dude.
He's a big dude.
Yeah, And I was not let down. You are kind of a giant. You're smarter than I thought you'd be.
Oh, that's good.
Which is always a good thing.
It's always a good thing.
When I left my family back home, there's a lot of emotions. What's up? There's a lot of hugging, a lot of crying. My mom and my sister were really sad. Me and my brother just silently hugged at the airport. My sister calls me like every day. Yeah, I just try to make sure I reach out to everybody I can. Just maintain that communication, maintain the link. Going from, a big church where I'm seeing 50 people at least every Sunday, to going out here where it's pretty quiet, it's a big change.
Father God, and reveal thy Spirit within me. Cast me not away from thy presence, and take not the Holy Spirit from me.
It's a tremendous privilege to be where you can attend all the divine services. And it's a chance to remind yourself in a very material way of the reason you came here. Because we're here primarily for a spiritual formation, not for an intellectual education. Of course, this is part of it, and an intellectual education is not an evil thing. The intellectual education is a support for an Orthodox foundation to the way you see the world and the way that vision of the world translates into your actions. The whole narrative of the tribes of Israel began with God calling Abraham to leave his homeland and his father's house, to leave that place in which he was protected in worldly terms, and to throw himself on God's protection. Instead of setting himself down in a place where he was protected from the attacks of the world, he would simply follow God. He would constantly pursue the truth.
I had first initially visited Etna because I was interested in the convent of St. Elizabeth. College was not something that I wanted to pursue, but I was given a tour of the seminary, and just like the convent, as soon as I saw the seminary, I immediately fell in love. I got a really good feeling about it, and Father Gregory, who is now my confessor out here, my spiritual father out here, was the one who was giving me the tour. And I just immediately, all the questions that I had about Orthodoxy that I could not answer on my own through reading or through the internet, I began to ask him, and I kept asking more and more questions, and he would answer them. And the more he answered my questions, I realized that learning about Orthodoxy could be endless and endless. When I was baptized, it was a very special day for me. I couldn't help but smile throughout the whole service.
You stand separate. You close.
Okay. My original goal when I came to Spots was to try to learn more so I could become a choir director, not realizing at the moment they didn't really have anything for that. Hopefully in the future they might. But I spoke about it a lot. I'm now learning how to fully prepare for all services and learn how they run.
Unto thee, hearken unto me, the lifting up of my hands, as an evening sacrifice.
The first thing people might think about is, okay, the priest, the men graduating need a wife to be ordained, so we need, presbyteros. But that's really not the most important part at all. The most important part is hopefully the men and women graduating from here, if they don't become priests, if they don't become presbyteros, they will become hopefully leaders in the parishes where they're going to go back to or eventually maybe move to. And as you know, parishes have Sunday schools, they have adult classes, to teach people about Orthodoxy. And what better than have a woman that has been to seminary and learned exactly the same thing as a man who hopefully will become priest, but not necessarily. It's just invaluable to have people like that out in our parishes. It's very much needed. It's absolutely necessary to have them here, as well as the men.
Hello and welcome. My name is Alexi Bushino, and thank you so much for joining me today. I'm the Communications and Development Director for SPOTS, St. Photios Orthodox Theological Seminary. I am really excited to share with you and give you a quick tour of St. Melanie's house. St. Melanie's is the future residence for married students and seminarians, and for couples or families even, that want to come and study at the seminary and prepare for their future service to the church. So we're very excited. The whole community came together. The fathers and the mothers from the monastery and convent and some of the seminarians helped refurbish it over the summer, and it's ready to go. And please join me. My job is to educate and invite people to participate in whatever way possible in the mission and what's going on here at Etna, what's going on here at St. Photios. And come on, kalostos, добро пожаловать, welcome. I'm just sort of a conduit for them to then participate and be part of something very special. Now there are possibilities that they're considering that they didn't even know existed. What's always really fun is that when I talk to any of the students, they just light up. They're happy. They're happy that they're here. They are excited about being in seminary. They're excited about being in Etna. Hello!
Hi!
How are you? What's this?
Some veggie lasagnas.
Veggie lasagnas?
Yeah, from the nuns.
Oh, well, that's kind of them. That's very sweet. Do you have a moment to come in? Or
Sure thing.
Well, make sure you take off your shoes.
Oh, yeah.
I'm really, really grateful for everybody that supports the seminary.
4 of us and 1 of you.
Last year, I asked Bishop Auxentius's blessing. I was just about to start teaching for the first time, and I remember thinking when I was a student, I would have really loved to have a field trip. I asked if I could give the students an opportunity to propose a destination for a field trip.
There being 3 of us and us all wanting the same thing, which was to see the relics of St. John of Shanghai in San Francisco, we all got together in secret behind the teacher's back, and we said, okay, we're all going to suggest.
It was quite to my surprise that each of them individually,
without even talking to each other, they all wanted to go to San Francisco to venerate the relics of St. John.
How funny. So strange, I guess it means we got to go.
to my surprise, it was the first time, at least for Uriah, to have ever gone on a pilgrimage at all.
Got in the car, I think we left here, 5 in the morning, something like that. It was early. It was an ungodly hour for such a holy trip.
So I got a blessing from the bishop to contact the priest of some of the other Orthodox churches in San Francisco.
We were going to be there for 3 days.
First we went to St. Tikhon's, actually the house dedicated to St. Tikhon of Zadonsk, where St. John's orphanage used to be. and we were able to see St. John's office there, which was very special. And we went to a church there, Our Lady of Kazan. Kira Rapp's great-great-grandfather, I think, served there as a priest. And so her family has some history connected with that church, and we were really glad that because of that connection we had the opportunity to go there because it was so beautiful. We went to the Serbian Orthodox Cemetery at Colma because Kira has a lot of relatives buried there, and we also had some friends and relatives buried there as well. We together sang the Troparia for the Dead, so it was nice to be able to visit those graves. We also brought roses to leave there and to say some prayers. And then we went on to the cathedral where Joy of All Husara, where St. John's relics are, and we were able to spend some time there. Among the other relics that they had quite a few relics in that church, there was one reliquary with, again, a bunch of different little relics, and there was one of the Apostle Timothy. And Timothy Granger, who was there, he had been there, but he hadn't realized it because the lettering was written in Slavonic. And so I was really glad that I noticed it so that he could venerate a relic of his patron saint.
And after that, we were done, and we drove back home.
It's hard to know that this resource is here and not want to just take advantage of it. I want to bring like a whole group of people. I want everyone to know what's out here because I had no idea, even hearing about it, how special it was, and you really don't know until you see it.
In the Holy Spirit, the Lord, the giver of life, who proceeded from the Father, who with the Father and the Son together is worshipped and glorified, who spake through the prophets, and one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, I confess in baptism and remission of sins. I look for the resurrection of the dead.
It was our first recruitment conference. I think overall we were very pleased, found it very successful. I have to admit we were a little bit surprised. We surprised ourselves at how successful it was. I mean, like anything that you do for the first time, we learned a lot of things from that experience, which we hope to improve in future recruitment conferences, but overall it went very well. I especially like the fact that we had people come from all over the country, come to Etna and get to see us in person, get to actually see our community. We're mostly known by name, and we're seen as being kind of a far distant community, a far distant diocese, and just kind of known by hearsay for a lot of people. So it was good for people to actually come and see us and meet us in person, and for us to meet them as well. So I think that really helped people within our eparchy to get to know us better.
The wolf, to do penance for his sins, was fasting during Lent. On meeting a lamb, his appetite was intensified, and he thought to himself, "This lamb is all alone. If I don't take care of him, someone else will. I think I'd better eat him in place of a salmon, considering him to be such, for salmon is an excellent food in the time of Lent."
You have the trappings, the intellectual trappings and tradition of Harvard, Oxford, Mount Athos in Etna. A number of the fathers, or those with whom I've interacted the most, are extremely gifted. And at least two of these fellow colleagues could easily be in a leading university. It has a jolly good collection of books. Seriously, you can lose yourself in this library and work quite efficiently, and it's growing by the week. I say that because I've taught it also in Greece, and I still teach in Greece, and that has been my perennial gripe, that we don't always have enough books. I wish very much that this will continue, and I'm sure it will. And I'm very, very moved to be able to be a small part of this gigantic effort to keep the flame going.
The seminary clearly sees its role as an essential one in the defense of our faith against innovation and the preservation of all that which have inherited from Christ. And hence, the motto of the seminary, from the words of the Holy Apostle Paul in his second epistle to the Greek Christian of Thessalonica: stand fast and hold the tradition which ye have been taught.
Why do the fathers die, suffer, are tortured for the heresies? Because it endangers your salvation. That's the thing. Yours and the church's. It has an effect on your personal life. No? Because rather than submitting to the church, and the church is trying to, the goal of the church is to unite all of creation, not just man, even inanimate objects, to Christ. That's the ultimate goal of creation. That's the ultimate goal of the church, right? All of creation tends to union with God, right? But the problem is that if you deny that, experience, if you start opposing that experience by saying that, well, I know better than the church, I know better than the mind of Christ, then you're endangering your own salvation.
Metropolitan Chrysostomos would often dialogue with atheists. If they say, I don't believe God exists, he would often say back to them, nor do I. And he'd say, in fact, that's actually, that would make you a good Orthodox Christian. And that is, a double take. And his logic would be that, well, when the Holy Fathers talk about God, they basically say to us in their most profound writings, if by existence you mean all creation, you have to understand that God is so different from that notion of existence that we have to say he doesn't exist. If we're going to be absolutely technically correct, we have to say he's not. He's not that. He's beyond it. He's not just supreme goodness, supreme intelligence, supreme mercy, and all these things, supreme beauty, and so on. No, he's actually different from that, because our words are so inadequate to deal with what they experience of him.
A reader in the Orthodox Church is the first step in the clergy. Usually they will assist the priest through reading of the hours, reading of the Psalter, reading of the Psalms, and in some cases they will also do the chanting in the church. But primarily their role is to assist in doing the readings in the church, as the name would suggest. Both Timothy and myself, my fellow seminarian, were tonsured readers at the convent.
Blessed is the Lord, lo, the servants of God, Timothy and Uriah are become readers.
Given how I become nervous, I usually become quite serious. So to me it felt quite serious, and it is a serious occasion. But it also came with a healthy dose of enjoyment and excitement to begin our clerical steps.
And I also want to wish to Timothy and Uriah, many years of service to the church.
So the seminary is absolutely beautiful. The nature around here is wonderful. Me being from the city, it's a peace that you don't get to experience at all. The convent, the monastery was so special, and their relationship with the seminarians are amazing. And so when you're around here, you see monastics, lay people, your friends, and it's a very peaceful and still environment where you're completely immersed in an Orthodox mindset. My favorite part was the Divine Liturgy with St. Elizabeth's Convent. That was so special to be able to pray with all of our friends and the monastics. And I suppose another part that's equal to that was our lecture with Father Photios. That was very special, and it was such beautiful words he gave us. I'm so happy I'm here. It's really amazing. This trip has changed my life. I never get a chance to spend time in an environment where you are praying, and after every single lecture, we're worshiping together. We have an environment where we're living as Orthodox Christians. You don't get this in the city, and I never had this in my life up until now, when I'm experiencing a week full of my, all of my educational dreams have come true here, and this is the fact that this exists for me and that this is an option in my future. It gives me such hope that someone can experience this who, has been dreaming about this their whole life as an Orthodox Christian.
I have a massive population in my city, and none of us knew about this place.
I've talked to the students in my classes, and those of you who go to St. Cenius camp, those who go to the youth conference, you can reach people that we can't, and I hope you take that as a serious kind of not only challenge but responsibility.
His Eminence said that this seminary has the potential to be a major force in the Orthodox world, especially within our own church, of educating future clergymen. First, we must engage people in participating through prayer, and engage people through raising awareness of who we actually are. I lived for 10 years in a geographic area that did not have a church that I could take communion in. So it required me to travel either to Etna or back to my home parish in order to actually participate in the life of the church. And frankly, it was miserable. I think that if we do our job right in communicating that message, and we ask for people to pray that, this is a God-pleasing venture.
We're certainly not on the way to extinction, but we're not flourishing as we were in the past. So these men are guardians of the tradition.
St. Photios Seminary does something completely different. It builds your life in ways that I have not seen.
What I've gained here from Spots is an Orthodox mindset, and for